Alright, hey guys, so we have another problem here, or another exercise. We have a parallelogram, P-A-R-K, and we have two angles that are congruent to each other, and we're trying to prove that two segments are congruent to one another. So let's first talk about what the given statements do for us, and ultimately what we're trying to prove here. So first off, let's talk about the fact that these are congruent. Let's take care of those. So K, M, P, so that would be right here. And then R,
Watson
and
Lujan, please
A.
report to the main office. Watson Lujan, report to the main office.
The joys of a school teacher. So R and A there. So I see here that we have two triangles that we're probably going to need to prove that they are congruent to one another. And then we have MP. We're going to prove that MP, I don't know why I'm putting 3, I'm just randomly putting 3, and then 3 here as well. So we're going to prove that these are congruent to one another. And if we prove that these two triangles are congruent to one another, you should be thinking what would happen next. So let me just jot that down. So triangle KPM is congruent to triangle ARN. Okay, and so we got to figure that out, and then we can say MP is congruent to NR, and we know that will always, after we prove that, then we can say CPCTC. So let's use what we know about parallelograms to then be able to prove that these two triangles are in fact congruent. Then subsequently CPCTC. Alright, so first off, with a parallelogram, you know that the opposite angles are going to be congruent. So we know K is going to be congruent to A, and we also know R would be congruent to P. But if you notice that P is being intersected with another line and R is being intersected with another line. So because of that, I'm not going to include R and P into my proof at all. So over here, I need to include angle MKP, is congruent to angle RAN. And that would just be, we can say definition of parallelogram. If you want to get, sorry, that's not a very good parallelogram, but you get the idea. If you wanted to get technical, you could say opposite angles congruent. Okay. Either one works for me. So then, remember, we have two angles that are congruent, and we need a third part, either an angle or a side, to prove that MP and RN are congruent. Remember, we haven't proved that these are congruent yet. So another part of a parallelogram is that the opposite sides are going to be congruent. So we can say KP is congruent to RA. So over here, KP is congruent to RA. And we know that would be definition of parallelogram once again. Instead of opposite angles are congruent, we would say opposite sides congruent. Either one, remember, works for me. And so do you think I need to include KR and PA in my proof? No, I don't, because M is interrupting that and N is interrupting it down here. It's not going to help me prove that these triangles are congruent, so I'm not going to include it. So I have an angle and a side, angle. Oh, perfect, so we're good there then. So number 3 here, I'm going to say that triangle KPM is congruent to triangle ARN because of angle, side. So we know what always comes next and last. Now that we've proven that, we can say MP, segment MP is congruent to segment NR because of CPCTC. And now we're happy. Okay, so once again, we had to know the properties of a parallelogram in order to be able to figure this out. If you don't know the properties of a parallelogram, you will not be able to do this. So if that was confusing, you need to look up, first off, the properties of a parallelogram. Okay, so once again, this is what our proof would look like, more or less, besides the given statements that were over there. I didn't include those, or at least not all of them. So we would also need to include that. If you have any further questions or something's not quite making sense, make sure you let me know. Other than that, good luck.